Hello, and welcome to the Narrowing Path, Walking the Spiritual Walk. My name is Steve Van Einstein. Thank y'all for joining me today as I go through the daily reading from James Allen's Daily Meditations. This is going to be for March 12th, and I'm looking forward to it. Yesterday was a great reading, really got me thinking about how much time and energy we waste to pursuing these desires of our lower nature, is the way it's kind of been phrased in these meditations. Our animalistic natures, our passions, our emotional state. And it's just a great reminder that all that energy that we've put into those things can get repurposed and delivered to a higher, or repurposed and sent to a higher direction, right? And I on the Facebook page, I said it's the difference between looking down and looking up. As simple as that might sound, but the same energy gets used. All the energy driving our motivations for our physical pleasures, sensations, things like that, sensual pleasures. All of that energy we put into those things can be stopped, repurposed for spiritual attainment. And I know that sounds obvious, but not always. So I'm looking forward to what today's reading brings on March 12th. This will be fresh to me, fresh to you, which means it will get my genuine reactions, responses, observations, and what I relate to about the reading, because it will be the first time I read it on the podcast. And so here we go. Here is March 12th daily meditation reading from James Allen. The early stage of transmutation is painful but brief, for the pain is soon transformed into pure spiritual joy. Along the saintly way towards the divine life, the midway region of transmutation is the country of sacrifice. It is the plain of renunciation. Interesting. Old passions, old desires, old ambitions, and thoughts are cast away and abandoned, but only to reappear in some more beautiful, more permanent, more eternal, satisfying form. As valuable jewels long guarded and cherished, are thrown tearfully into the melting pot, yet are remolded into new and perfect adornments, so the spiritual alchemist, at first loth to part company with long-cherished thoughts and habits, at last gives them up, to discover a little later, to his joy, that they have come back to him in the form of new faculties, rarer powers, and purer joys. Spiritual jewels, newly burnished, beautiful, and resplendent. The wise man meets passion with peace, hatred with love, and returns good for evil. Wow, that's quite a reading about the process of this whole thing, and it's pretty intense, actually. Because it's really forcing you to take a look at what your goals and what you're working towards, and what your priorities and values are. Like, you really have to take a look at these things. What's old and left over, and can be thrown into the fire, as it says here. So let's take a look at this one. The early stage of transmutation is painful but brief. I can attest to that. When you let go of some of these old thoughts that you thought were going to just bring you some sort of joy or fulfillment, right? Like, a lot of the things I had desired to accomplish were really things I had rested my happiness and personal contentment with life on, and I was expecting that to be delivered from them. So it is painful. You separate from these things you thought you always wanted, or you separate from these things that you thought would bring you certain results or outcomes, right? And it's not easy to do. to sacrifice, to part with those things. At least it hasn't been easy for me. And then he said, the pain is soon transformed into spiritual joy. This has been true for me too, the second part there, that it does turn into spiritual joy, yes. But I will also say this, I forget that every time. Every stinking time. I forget that it turns into something much more powerful, more joyful, more amazing and magnificent than I ever thought possible. I always forget it. I like how this next paragraph opened, by the way. Along the saintly way towards the divine life. I like it's just the little journey we're on, the saintly way, this path towards the divine life. The midway region of transmutation, where we change this energy we talked about yesterday, that I was talking about earlier, today as well, where this energy, this change in energy, this change in intention, or this change in direction, is this midway region of transmutation is the country of sacrifice. That's where we change the direction we're putting our energy in. It is the plane of renunciation. Like the picture painted here is great. The country of sacrifice. It is the plane of renunciation. The midway region of transmutation. So, midway region of this journey's transmutation, and we find ourselves during that region of time in the country of sacrifice, and in the plane of renunciation. This is where we give up. We sacrifice our selfish desires, our selfish and self-centered desires. We renunciate those parts of us, and that frees our energies to be used for a better, more higher purpose. It sounds comical, the way it's being phrased here, and honestly, I really enjoy it because I like the visual, the mental picture I can paint, and but the reality of it is, it's what happens, because the beginning of the journey is a period of understanding and investigation. And that will probably continue the entire time, the discovery portion of what it can actually do. But if you do get to a section where you have to let things go, or it's all just talk, the action needs to be there. You need to be willing to sacrifice these selfish desires, these desires of our lower natures, like I stated earlier. He goes on to say, the old passions, old desires, old ambitions and thoughts are cast away and abandoned, but that's a hard thing to struggle with, because we all think we're doing the right things. We all think, it's not unreasonable to want this. It's not unreasonable to want these things. He says, but we have to sacrifice that stuff. Throw it into the fire. But he goes on to say, after these old passions, old desires, old ambitions, and thoughts are cast away and abandoned, but only to appear in some more beautiful, more permanent, more eternally satisfying form. What an amazing thing. We get these things back, just not the way we might have expected. Usually the universe, God, good, society has a way of taking what we want, taking it into it and spitting back out, or giving us a version we never would have considered. What an interesting thought that is. Because we always think we know what's best for us, but I can tell you from my own personal experience that's not true. I think I know what's best for me. The world usually knows what I need, which is odd, because it takes a lot of control out of my hands and a lot of influence away from me, right? And but the reality of it is, it's what needs to happen, doesn't it? I do a pretty good job of messing my own life up at the end of the day. A more eternally satisfying form. That's a pretty big promise. more beautiful, more permanent, more eternally satisfying form. As valuable jewels, long guarded and cherished. He's talking about our old passions, desires, and ambitions, and thoughts, cast away and abandoned. Those are the jewels, and the valuable jewels he's talking about here, are thrown tearfully into the melting pot, yet are remolded into new and perfect adornments. So the spiritual alchemists, at first loth to part company with the long-cherished thoughts and habits, at last gives them up. This isn't meant to be easy. If this pathway was easy, if it was guaranteed, I mean, there's promises here, but it's not guaranteed. Well, I guess, but honestly, that's the funny part about it. It is pretty much guaranteed. From other people's experience and my own personal experience, if you give this stuff up, you'll get a life you didn't even know was possible for yourself. That's been my experience. But we still don't trust it. We don't have the faith to walk in. We don't have that. We just don't do it, do we? We still want to do it our way. We still want to do it the way we think is the most appropriate. And that really messes us up. It messed me up for a long time. So, first loth to part company with long-cherished thoughts and habits, at last gives them up. When we at last let these things go and hand them over to God, the universe, creator, source, energy, nature, you name it, to discover a little later, to his joy, that they have come back to him in the form of new faculties, rarer powers, and purer joys. Spiritual jewels newly burnished, beautiful and resplendent. We don't even know what's in store for us when we can let these things go and we focus on living a spiritual way of life, and then things just get brought back into our lives that we had no idea were possible. We had no idea could happen for a person like us. I had no idea I could live the life I'm living today. I'd be given the opportunities I was given today. I had no idea that was something that could possibly come to fruition. For a long time, I didn't think I deserved to have a good life. And the life I was pursuing I would have been shorting myself on that, to be fair. I've gotten more in my sobriety and living a spiritual way of life in all areas of my life than I ever thought possible. So, I love the way he writes that, though. A little later, to his joy, that they have come back to him in the form of new faculties, rarer powers, and purer joys. Spirituality can sometimes be like a superpower. That understanding, the compassion, the love, forgiveness, hope, faith, the ability to be honest, justice and discipline, and integrity, service. These are superpowers to a lot of people. They were to me. Spiritual jewels newly burnished, beautiful and resplendent. He ends it with, the wise man meets passion with peace, hatred with love, and returns good for evil, implying the non-wise man returns passion with passion, hatred with hatred, and evil for evil. Our ideals don't change regardless of what's being done. Our principles don't change. Our disciplines don't change. We don't change. We might feel a certain way. We might dislike what's being said. We might disagree. We might feel wronged. We might actually be being wrong. It's not too far out of the realm of entertainment or a possibility. By any means. There's a lot of sick people in this world. And selfish people in this world. But that doesn't matter. Our conduct is not dependent on the conduct of others. And there's freedom and liberation in that. And those are sometimes those superpowers, those jewels he was talking about, more valuable than any physical material commodity that I could ever have asked for. And that's beautiful. So thank you all for joining me again today. Great reading, great reading about what happens along the journey. And I love the illustrations he paints in our mind with what that really means. So looking forward to the March 13th reading, of course, and we'll see where that brings us. And I will be back with you all tomorrow. Until next time, thanks.